Hello and welcome back to World 360. Why has the US deployed thousands of troops in the Red Sea? Why is Iran's foreign minister visiting Japan, a first since 2019? And how is Putin using textbooks to maintain his narrative about the Ukraine war? We answer this and more in today's episode. So first up, what's happening in the Red Sea? Now, we've often talked about the South China Sea in context of China's increasing maritime aggression. But the Red Sea, which lies between Africa and Asia, is also starting to become an interesting area due to increased military activity. In short, it's starting to become a new area of contention between the US and longtime foe Iran. On Sunday, the US deployed 2 warships and over 3,000 US military personnel in the Red Sea. One of the warships is an amphibious assault ship, which supports attacks that can be launched from the sea by naval and landing forces against hostile shores. And the other ship is a dock landing ship, which also supports such operations, including landings. Now, this seems to be part of a response from the US to counter Iran's maritime activity in the Red Sea. Don't forget the tensions are still high between Iran and the US over a scuttled nuclear deal, and China's role in helping Iran and Saudi Arabia re-establish diplomatic ties also seemed to irk Washington recently. Now let's take a look at why the US has carried out this latest deployment in the Red Sea. For one, it has accused Iran of either seizing or attempting to take control of nearly 20 commercial ships in the region over the past 2 years. Last week, the US was also considering putting armed sailors and marines on commercial ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz, which is considered the central artery of global trade. Also, the Gulf waterways are vital to the global oil trade. Millions of barrels of oil are transported through here. Therefore, any tensions in these waters could have ripple effects, not just geostrategically, but economically as well. Now, Iran's argument is that the US deployments in the Red Sea have little to do with protecting commercial shipping industry. On Monday, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman said US deployments created instability and insecurity in the Persian Gulf. Also, Iran hasn't denied seizing ships, but rather has defended its actions by saying certain vessels were seized due to legal disputes regarding ownership, and one had collided allegedly with an Iranian ship. One of these ships was actually a Chinese-owned tanker that was bound for the US and carrying Kuwaiti crude oil for US energy firm Chevron Corporation. Some say Iran is playing tit for tat after the US tried to seize a cargo of Iranian oil near Greece last year, which led Iran to seize 2 Greek tankers and hold them for months. The Supreme Court in Greece ultimately had to get involved in the case, and the vessels were eventually released. For our next topic, I want you to remember the famous saying, history is written by the victors. In view of this, let's look at new history textbooks that have been unveiled in Russia. On Monday, Russian Education Minister Sergei Krasov and Putin aide Vladimir Medinsky held a press conference where they unveiled the new textbooks for 11th and 12th graders that praised Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A new chapter has also been added to cover events from 2014 to the present day, including an entire section on Russia's special military operation, which talks about Russia's motives, including pressure from the US and the rebirth of Nazism in Ukraine. The textbooks also touch upon the sanctions slapped on Russia for going to war with Ukraine, but describe the withdrawal of foreign companies from Russia as an opportunity for Moscow to be open to many other markets. Now, these new history books will be used in Russian schools in the new academic year starting September 1st. During the press conference, the Russian education minister said it only took 5 months for the books to be rewritten, and new history textbooks for 5th and 9th graders are also being planned. The rewriting of history is not new, especially with the Ukraine war. In April this year, Russian authorities erased references to Kiev and Ukraine, presumably in preparation of issuing new books in the upcoming academic year. For example, in chapters about Prince Igor in medieval Russia, references that he began to rule Kiev were replaced with he began to rule Russia. Basically, references to independent Ukraine in any historical period has been systematically phased out of Russian textbooks. Similarly, Ukraine has been trying to erase its Soviet history. If you recall, in February this year, Ukrainian lawmakers drafted a bill to abolish May 9th as Victory Day, a holiday that commemorates the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in 1945 and is celebrated by most former Soviet states. The fear in Ukraine was that such holidays seem to serve Vladimir Putin's desires of reuniting former Soviet states, be it Ukraine or others, with the Russian mainland. For our last topic, we're returning back to the topic of Iran, but specifically how, for the first time in 4 years, an Iranian foreign minister has made a trip to Japan. But before we go any further, it's important to mention that ever since the Ukraine war, Japan has started to lean closer to the West and the US, unlike in 2014 when it attempted to stay neutral after Russia's annexation of Crimea. Therefore, for one of America's adversaries, Iran, to send an official to an Asian state that is increasingly pro-West is sure to be interesting. There was also once a time when Iran used to be a major oil exporter to Japan, but oil trade declined after the Trump administration slapped sanctions on the Middle Eastern country. It was a similar story with India, which also had to halt its oil imports from Iran for fear of attracting sanctions too. Now back to the foreign minister's visit to Japan. On Monday, Iran's foreign minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian touched down in Tokyo and has since held bilateral talks with his Japanese counterpart as well as Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. The two sides discussed the Ukraine war, the situation in Afghanistan, and Western sanctions against Iran. During the meeting with Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi, the Japanese side reportedly called on Iran to take constructive responses with regard to the war in Ukraine, which simply translates to "Please don't provide Russia with arms against Ukraine." So, to touch upon this topic a little more, let's rewind. Last year, the US accused Iran of delivering drones to Russia, and in October, Iran reportedly agreed to provide Russia with surface-to-surface missiles too. Ukraine has also claimed that it has destroyed several Iran-made attack drones targeted in Ukraine's Odessa region. Though this is the first time an Iranian official of this level has visited Japan in 2019, the Iranian foreign minister and his Japanese counterpart have shared many telephonic calls. In fact, in April this year, the Japanese foreign minister expressed support to Iran for wrapping up the nuclear deal or the JCPOA, talks for which have been stalled for years. Now, this deal, to which Russia and China were also parties, was aimed at reducing Iran's nuclear activities. Thank you so much for watching. This is Pia Krishnankutty for ThePrint.